The first question I wanted to ask you is why you chose Yemen as your first field visit of 2021.
Yes, I mean, I chose Yemen. First of all, Yemen for Geneva Call is one of the priority contexts in terms, first of all, of humanitarian needs and in terms of complexity as well of conflict landscape. And it's a country where I haven't been personally since we started the program a year and a half ago. And it was for me a top priority for me to be visiting the team there and to see the challenges and opportunities for Geneva Call.
Thank you very much. So you visited Taiz and Aden, two war-torn cities in southern Yemen. What was it like? And in particular, I wanted to ask you about the humanitarian access question. Are humanitarian organizations able to provide assistance and protection to people in need?
Yeah, I mean, we had the opportunities to travel a little bit around the southern Yemen. Aden, as a town, definitely we see the aftermath of the violent conflict that took place over the recent years, and we see the consequences of the various conflicts that took place in the city and around the city, with, of course, destruction of buildings, a lot of armed actors on the ground, moving around, and a sense of insecurity, which is, of course, growing. In the meantime, we see life starting again, resuming again, with markets and people trying to live their lives. So it's a difficult balance to make, but clearly the needs are still huge, especially in terms of protection of civilian population. And the fact that armed actors or the members of armed groups don't have the needed IHL trainings. They just took up the weapons a few years ago without proper training or any knowledge about IHL, and this is something, it's something which is a top priority to make sure that they behave themselves properly and then respect civilians. When it comes to Aden, the town as well is in a peculiar situation, as it is basically there is a front line that is dividing the town, and the road to get there is extremely difficult. The main road is blocked because of the conflict, and we had to take a road through the mountains. So it's a 6 hours road, and it was hard for us. So definitely for civilians, for people injured, for people with diseases, I can only imagine the great difficulties that they would have to basically go to the town or leave the town. So it's a very difficult situation around Taiz.
Fascinating. Thank you so much. So during your visit, the Taiz Axis Force, which is in charge of the military in Taiz, has signed a unilateral declaration on the protection of healthcare during COVID. Can you tell me a little bit about this declaration and in particular what role Geneva Call played?
Yeah, it was a great achievement for us. We met with the leadership of this Thais Axis Force. We are the only NGO basically that was able to arrive to the town and to speak with this commander of the Thais Axis Force and to convince them to commit to the declaration. Basically, it's a tool that Geneva Call use worldwide. It's a model declaration on the healthcare, its protection, the protection of medical personnel, to facilitate as well the access of medical organizations to people in need. And we push armed groups to basically commit publicly on respecting healthcare during conflict. So our role was basically to provide this document, to convince them, to negotiate with them the importance of them committing to it, and then when they sign it, to accompany them as well in how they're going to concretely implement and facilitate access to medical organizations, and as well allowing relief to be provided to medical structures. So it's not only the signature, but it as well the support to the implementation to this declaration.
It's a big achievement. Congratulations. I'm going to change the subject now. Now that COVID vaccines are available, what will be the challenges in countries such as Yemen, where whole proportions of territories are controlled by our armed groups?
Yeah, I mean, this is the biggest challenge that we see in Yemen, but as well in other countries where armed groups are controlling territories or having a strong influence as well on populations and areas. Geneva Call, always want to advocate on the fact that we should not forget areas that are not under the control of the government and where COVID-19 vaccines, like other vaccines, are definitely needed. And it is the role of Geneva Call, and we want to make sure as well that we could play a role in facilitating the access for these vaccines, trying to convince the groups as well to allow and facilitate the vaccines to be deployed and then used for the populations. So it's something that we would be ready. We already talked about that with a couple of armed groups as well that we know in Yemen as well and in other conflicts. And definitely something that we would like to pursue this year to make sure that this pandemic is not hitting hard as well on people that are not, let's say, in the areas that are controlled by the government.
Big challenge indeed. So apart from the COVID situation and COVID vaccines in particular, what do you think will be the most pressing challenges in Yemen in 2021?
There are many challenges. First of all, from the political side, definitely the peace efforts are extremely important. We need, as humanitarians, to have a peace which is sustainable, and so we are all looking for that. So really hope that parties to the conflict as well sit and try to find durable solutions. Meanwhile, we need to address current humanitarian issues. The biggest issue for me, one of the biggest issues are the children, the protection of children. The fact that they should not be recruited as well by the armed actors, that they should be far away from the battlefields, is something that we already engaged with the STC, which is a major armed actor in the south of Yemen. Another issue that I could see is the protection of healthcare as well, and the facilitation of humanitarian access. It's very important that organizations are allowed and have their access facilitated to provide needed relief. And another angle that we identified is the question of psychosocial support, especially for members of armed groups, the very young ones that fought since many years, and they're basically left without any psychosocial support. And those youngsters go back to their families, go back to their villages or to their towns, and create problems and violence. So to stop this spiral of violence, we need as well to address the issue of psychosocial support for young members that joined all these armed groups during the recent years of conflict.
Thank you very much, Hichem. I have a last question, last but not least. What do you think will be the trends of the conflict in Yemen in 2021? How do you think it will evolve?
I mean, definitely what we see currently in Yemen, unfortunately, is the fragmentation of the various actors of the conflict. Which is characterized by a variety of actors, of course, allying sometimes fighting against each other. And this fragmentation really is a trend that we see not only in Yemen, but in many parts of the world. The conflicts are mutating, they are much more complex, and it's something that we have to analyze carefully before we engage with armed actors, as they may be completely, let's say, different one year after the other. So it's constant analysis of the conflict settings and how we adapt basically our engagement technique and methodology with the various groups.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights. That's all for today, and I'm looking forward to your next field visit then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.